The Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or more well known as North Korea, is the most secretive and strictest state in the world. The authoritarian government has complete control over their population, limiting all access to the outside world through isolation, repression, and indoctrination. It is a propagandic approach by the government to skew world media and to assert complete government rule over the people. Korea, once one country, but at the end of the Second World War was split, the North occupied by the Soviet Union and the South by U.S. forces. The Soviets supported the system of communist rule, and the two sides could not unite under the same governmental rule. In 1950, the Korean War began and lasted 3 years with both sides trying to occupy one another. To this day, the two remain at war because no official peace treaty was signed. Through the support of the Soviet Union, North Korea was able to rise to authoritarian rule. Kim Il-sung quickly led to power with the help of the Soviets, everything under strict state rule and a movement towards nationalism. Citizens were shown, taught, and pushed to believe their leaders of godly status. Before the borders shut during the war, many citizens were able to flee. Since 1948, the same Kim family line has been in power. In the 70 years that has passed, the country has not changed that much internally. The capital, Pyongyang, is the only city. The U.S. has one of the tensest relationships with them, with constant threats of nuclear weapons. China is the only country that is allowed to have exports sent aside, and on the South Korean side, the demilitarized zone holds as a continuous standoff between the two. The only ways the outside world has been able to get information is through visitors who have been allowed inside and defecting sources. While it's not scientifically representative, the information comes directly from sources with first-hand knowledge. It is important to know this presentation is mainly sourced from those two factors. A limited amount of tourism is allowed into the country every year. Many on record stating everything looks quite ordinary, but emphasizing that we are only shown what we are allowed to see. Visitor accounts are not fully accurate because they get a biased perspective. Outside, we are only getting a slim amount of information. It is hard to compile accurate and trustworthy accounts about the country's inner workings. From the information that can be gathered, the country remains highly criticized and under constant human rights violations. The country is always grabbing the attention of the world news, but it is the people of North Korea who faces the biggest threats. Through each new U.S. presidency, there is a promise to amend the relationships in hope of helping the people. Since COVID-19, many sources have been cut off, and the world is unaware of the well-being of the people. The country is said to be home to more than 25 million people. There is not enough to eat in the country, and many rely on aid agencies. Unbeknownst to the people, the country is under constant distress, famine, severe poverty, lack of technological advances, and unaware of the outside world. Anyone who goes or speaks against the government are brutally punished, put in prison and/or labor camps, or publicly executed. The regime depends greatly on the compliance of the people. Much of the country's resources are spent towards indoctrination, forcing every citizen to be shaped into a loyal one. Their primary tool is the use of propaganda to glorify their system and villainize foreign influences. Defectors have stated that propaganda messages and signs are everywhere. Their biggest form of control is media. The main sources of media is radio, TV, and newspapers. All media must be approved by the state, making sure anything that is released or available to the people meets to obey and submit praising of their leaders. The country's hardships are never reported, instead highlighting how advanced they are because of the leaders' revolutionary thinking. Recently, social media has made an appearance for global users, but the official account, translated to our race, only provides news and propaganda from a central news agency. However, access to such media is expensive and only available to the elite. Even so, it is limited. Your average citizen does not have access to any of this. One defector spoke that he had no idea what the word internet meant. There is no internet connection to the outside world. Cell phones only just appeared in 2008, highly restrictive and no international calling. And TVs and radios preset to only access state channels. Anything that is foreign and not approved is illegal. All independent news and media is illegal. Media does cover international news, but to a limited extent. They only report news that reinforces the government's position and encourages people to support the state ideologies. Such things could include anti-government protests, human rights violations, economic failure, or anything that will make other countries look worse off because they have no other access. This is the main source to the outside. However, some find way to illegally source from themselves. One defector said, "Our family would listen to South Korean radio. We had to keep the volume low so that someone walking by couldn't hear it, hiding it from our neighbors and friends. Listening to foreign radio is considered a crime against the state. If we had been caught, we could have faced years in political prison, even execution." Defectors have also sourced they get outside information from smugglers. Citizens are said to be mainly interested in South Korea, China, and the U.S. They see the benefit of defectors sending financial aid to their families, so they have an idea of the economies around them. Defectors have said they hope for one day when their country can prosper and can be accepted by the international society. Many have probably no idea of the world around them, how other people live, other races, and other nations that exist, especially that of not even knowing what is happening in the world. Since the pandemic, the world is unaware of their status and need for aid. They only see and hear what they are given. Most citizens will never see a foreigner in their lives. These photos, although told to be real, have been verified to be photoshopped images. Enforced poverty, food insecurity, dismal public health, refugee crisis, refugee exploitation, sex trafficking, and stateless children. These are the challenges and results that come from the tragic consequences of the absolute prioritization of political control. A major term that has been commonly used in the past years is fake news. The use of fake news can be defined similarly to propaganda, however, forcibly persuading one's views for the benefit of one's interests. So what is really the difference between the two? When it is harming the rights and freedoms of people, fake news and propaganda can have the same impact. Among online theorists, there's a common conspiracy about North Korea, asking the question, is it actually utopia? And connecting the ideas of fake news to propaganda, because our main resources of information comes in the form of biased first-hand accounts. It is hard to know the truth, what is really going on inside. For all we know, in our outsider perspectives, we could be being fed propaganda ourselves. The intensity of North Korea's struggle to limit access to foreign news, information, and culture reflects the leader's conviction that foreign media represents a significant challenge to the totalitarian regime. And that makes it all the more important that efforts continue to provide access to outside information for the people. Defectors, the world, and South Korea all hope for a time of peace and liberation for the North Korean people.